The small town of Zalambesa, a town on the border with Eritrea, is one of the most devastated by the war on Tigray. Zalambesa was repeatedly bombarded by heavy artillery by Eritrean forces that would come to commit some of the most gruesome atrocities on residents. Till this day, Eritrean forces have continued their occupation of some part of Zalambesa, forcing residents to leave the area to settle in IDP camps in surrounding villages and towns. We met with some of the residents that tell us about the massacre that took place on November 23, 2020, just days after the occupation of the town by the Eritrean forces.
I had just given birth 2 weeks ago. My husband was caring for me and my children. He didn't know what to do, so he hid our children in a hole in the toilet and went outside when he heard commotion. When they called him, he told them he was a civilian and pulled out his ID and showed it to them. They killed him right there. I didn't know it at the time, but they had also killed my neighbor. It's hard to say how many they killed. They killed children, women, and pregnant mothers. We suffered a lot.
أنا بعال جزاي هاي لك حسايب بهاد بقفعين عاجنتا هرئنا وصع يلوم.
My husband's name was Haile Kahsai. They took him out. They said, "Where is the junta? Show us." They dragged him out of his home, away from his children, took him to a corner and executed him. But he wasn't the only one. They also killed Haben, Priest Sahle, Dawit, and Fraweni, and their grandmother who had come to visit. Abadit and my other neighbors, Tasfai Gabra Mariam and Huluf. In one instance, we had to bury 8 bodies in one grave. There were 6 people in the house, and 4 of us were injured. The 4th one was a child. He died. He was buried in the backyard of the house.
The families of the victims tell us they were not allowed to bury their family members for days. When they could finally bury the bodies, they tell us the bodies had turned rotten.
We buried them after 12 days. We didn't go back to the house after we left that day. How could we go back? We buried Priest Isaias in front of his 6 children, Gabra Kahsai and his wife, Tolda and his wife, in the yards of their home. Their bodies were rotten. We covered them with a towel and then buried them. They wouldn't allow us to bury them in a church.
I couldn't get out of the house as I had just given birth. I buried my husband in our yard and left the house.
Stories like that of the Zalambesa massacre are present throughout Tigray, where families and friends of loved ones, even over a year later, have not been able to properly mourn their loved ones or find solace and a promise that justice will one day be served.